Hey everybody, what's up? Eric here. Been a couple of years, but I've got a really interesting video for you today. Growing up, the Game Boy Advance was possibly one of my favorite systems, purely just because of the portability. Taking the school bus to school, even in the Game Boy Color days and Advance days, was lots of fun, lots of portable memories. Even long car trips. The only downside to the Game Boy Advance was the fact that it didn't have a backlight. I'm sure you guys remember the magnifying glass with the worm lights or the book lights that used to plug into the top here. Really was kind of cumbersome when you think about it. And especially now, in the days where we've got smartphones with LCDs and OLED screens that are really beautiful, especially the OLEDs with the colors that are really vibrant. You kind of look back on the older systems, the older handheld systems, and think, gee, what went wrong? Why didn't Nintendo backlight some of their stuff? They did a little bit with the Game Boy Pocket Light back in the 90s. But, other competitors like the Sega Game Gear did have a backlit screen, or frontlit, whatever. So today's video, I'm going to attempt, after much weeks of anticipation of ordering parts and having parts arrive, a backlight mod for the Game Boy Advance. Here we have the this purple Game Boy Advance that I bought off of Facebook. It's not really in a working state purely because it doesn't have a battery cover, and it came with like a European power adapter that plugs into here, so you can only play it if you have a European to where I am here, an Australian wall adapter. So we're going to go ahead and backlight this Game Boy. Not only are we going to backlight it, but we're going to put it in this really cool jungle green shell. I've got a jungle green N64, and I thought it would be cool to have some kind of continuity, if you will, throughout the game collection. So we're going to backlight the LCD, change the entire shell, new buttons. One other cool thing we're going to do is put in a rechargeable battery, which will sit in here. Cut a little notch out for the micro USB cable, and that way we've kind of effectively brought the Game Boy Advance to 2019 now. So nearly 20 years since the Game Boy Advance came out, and we're going to propel it very far into the future. So we'll head on over to the workbench located just behind me, and we'll see how we go. I've never done any little bit of soldering before. I do have some experience working with small hand tools and small microelectronics, but we're going to see how we go. So it should be a pretty fun episode. So thanks for watching, and let's see how we go. Start by taking out the Y-wing and Phillips head screws from the back of your GBA. Set them aside if you're reusing them, or place them off to the side if you have new ones going in after you're done. As stated, for this mod, I will be putting the board into a new shell, which came with new screws and buttons. Once the back is off, gently remove the LCD flex cable from pushing up on either side, releasing the screen from the board. Be very careful here, you do not want to damage any of these parts. Unscrew the standoffs from either side of the board and remove the board, membranes, and buttons. Be very careful removing the original LCD. Use a trick similar to removing ice cubes from the ice cube tray. If it still doesn't come out, gently pry with a spudger to remove it. If you're using your existing shell, or a new one, place your LCD in and figure out what parts of the shell you need to cut away for the LCD to fit. Here we've trimmed the bottom left and bottom right corners to flush, as well as some other bits on the inside of the LCD cutout. Don't worry about the LCD feeling loose in here. The pressure from the board, once it's fully secure, will hold the LCD in place. With this mod, you'll be needing a connector cable. In my case, I needed a 40-pin connector flex, which came with a pre-soldered wire already on there, which we will solder to the main board in just a moment. Once the screen is roughed in, connect your flexes. One quick note is to make sure the traces are running the right way. So inserting the connector backwards seems a bit weird, but assuredly, it's the right way. You'll also need to route the flex so it comes out at the top right of the screen, so either tape it up or fold it neatly in place. Once the screen is in with the board on top, buttons inserted, and membranes on top of the buttons, secure the board back down with 3 standoff screws and heat up your soldering iron. Here you'll want to solder the red wire to the upper left corner of DA1. This is how the backlight LCD receives power. I'd recommend having a finer soldering tip than I did here. I ended up having to go back and readdress the solder point, so just check that before you do this. At this stage, if you're confident in your soldering work, close the back of it up, lining up all of the plastic inserts, L&R buttons, etc., and we'll get to work on this rechargeable battery. There's only 4 steps for this part, and it's pretty easy. Remove the left contact side, as our battery only needs the right side. Trim the little nub in the middle and the extra lip of plastic on the middle right side. Make sure that they are smooth and flush, as a battery will be sitting in here. We don't want any puncture points, which can be a fire hazard. Lastly, sketch out and trim the micro USB socket. Mine ended up being pretty rough looking, arguably the worst and most quote-unquote modded looking part of the project. But that's all right, I will probably end up ordering another one eventually. Once that's in place, make sure to switch the battery in the on position and test and make sure it all works. If you've done it all right, you're good to go. Well done. All right, so here you have it. The completed Game Boy Advance backlight shell rechargeable battery glass screen mod. I've also fitted it with a flash cartridge, so I can play pretty much any game I want, wherever, whenever. A couple quick notes about this mod. I guess on a difficulty scale, if you've never done something like this before, definitely take your time. Even if you've done similar things, whether it's repairing phones and tablets or having some sort of interest in soldering or even a hobby with retro games, never go in there confidently. I think I went into it a little too confidently, thinking, oh, this is going to be really easy, and it kind of was in retrospect. But there's just a couple tricky parts, which I would definitely advise double check before you commit to everything and stitch everything up. One thing is making sure you're cutting all of the inside bits where the LCD sits. Make sure you cut those as flush as you can. Another note, I believe I mentioned this just before, is tape up the metal contacts that sit behind the screen. You don't want any grounding issues. You don't want the Game Boy to short out, because once you assemble everything and you put on the power switch, you don't want to start to question, what have I done wrong? Which is what happened to me. I had to double check my solder point. I made sure to put some capped on or non-conductive tape on any contacts that may have been shorting out the screen, because you got to remember the screen is now a powered thing. It has its own power source from that solder point. Aside from that, I think I will probably end up ordering another door for the rechargeable battery, just because this one looks terrible, to be honest with you. But you really, this kind of plastic isn't very forgiving. So once you start to cut it, it starts to bow and really can't recover. It is what it is. It's fine. It's only a $2 part. But other than that, I think it was a successful mod, and I'm feeling pretty proud of myself, and definitely ready to move on to some more. But between now and then, I think I'm going to have fun with my new Game Boy Advance. One other quick note: make sure you don't leave any dust or hair or any fine particles beneath this screen, because if you want to take them out, you got to either lift the screen, depending on what kind of adhesive was used, or tear everything out from the inside, blow it out, or whatever, and clean it out, and then put it back together. So this was definitely fun. I would definitely recommend this to anybody. It isn't a really cost-effective thing per se. I'll leave all of my totals for parts and stuff down below in the description. But off the top of my head, I think it was maybe around a $400 Australian mod. So really not worth it. But it was worth it for the learning experience. So I felt this was a really successful operation, and I'm very happy and proud of what I've done. So for now, I'll shut up and kick back and play some Game Boy. So if you don't mind, I'll leave you to it.